Well, welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. You're watching The World Today. Here's what's coming up on the program. The UK government unveils plans to cut foreign aid, child education and women's health in Africa, set to take the biggest hits. Deaths still on the rise in Gaza as more than 10 people die from malnutrition in the last 24 hours. The US pulls out of the UN Culture and Education Agency, UNESCO. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Let's begin. Now, Africa is still reeling from the impact of aid cuts by the United States, but will be facing even more impacts and challenges when the UK makes good its plan to cut foreign aid. The government had in February said it would slash foreign aid spending by 40% from 0.5% gross national income to 0.3% to increase defense spending to 2.5% after pressure from the US. A report from the Foreign Office says the biggest cuts this year will come in Africa, with less spent on women's health and water sanitation, with increased risks, it says, of disease and death. It also says bilateral support, that is, aid going directly to the recipient country for some countries, would decrease, and multilateral organizations deemed to be underperforming would face future funding cuts. It has not yet announced which countries will be affected. The government, however, said spending on multilateral aid bodies, that's money given to international organizations like the World Bank, would be protected, including the Gavi Vaccine Alliance, and it said the UK would also continue to play a key humanitarian role in hotspots such as Gaza, Ukraine, and Sudan. The government says the cuts follow a line-by-line strategic review of aid by the minister, which focused on prioritization, efficiency, protecting planned humanitarian support, and life contracts while ensuring responsible exit from programming where necessary. And now to the case of the United States President Donald Trump being corrected on the facts. Deputy Director of Ethiopia's GERD Coordination Office, Victor Temir, has denied claims that the U.S. helped fund his country's new mega dam on the River Nile. He said it is false and destructive. President Donald Trump had claimed that the controversial dam was built with the United States money largely. Officially known as the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, the project is Africa's biggest hydroelectric plant and a major source of pride for Ethiopians. Over the 14 years it's taken to complete the GERD, the Ethiopian authorities have repeatedly said the dam was funded by the government along with the contributions from the Ethiopian people. The dam has, however, angered Egypt and Sudan, which lie upstream on the River Nile, and fear the dam could lead to less water flowing into their countries. Let's switch to the Middle East now, as more than 100 aid agencies warn that mass starvation is spreading across Gaza. They accuse Israel of not allowing food inside the strip to be distributed. The health ministry in Gaza says at least 10 people have died of malnutrition over the last 24 hours. Now, as we reported yesterday, hospitals have been buckling under the pressure of the number of patients it's been seen over the last few weeks. One hospital says it's been seeing as many as 2,000 patients a month, but now operations have been limited due to the Israeli offensive in Deir al-Balah. Aid workers themselves are not immune to the deepening hunger crisis in Gaza. There have been reports of aid workers fainting and feeling helpless in the face of the hunger crisis facing most children. There are also reports of people selling precious jewels for flour. In the meantime, the Israeli negotiating team is in Doha awaiting an official response from Hamas on a ceasefire. The Israeli government also says it's not responsible for the chronic food shortage in Gaza and accuses Hamas of deliberately creating a crisis. It follows the aid organization's warning of the spread of mass starvation in Gaza. The over 100 aid agencies want an immediate negotiated ceasefire, the opening of all land crossings, and the free flow of aid through UN-led mechanisms. France's foreign ministry says a risk of famine in war-torn Gaza is the result of the blockade imposed by Israel on the Palestinian territory. The World Health Organization has also warned of widespread starvation in Gaza, with food deliveries into the territory far below what is needed for the survival of the population. Religious bodies have waded into the situation in Gaza on Tuesday. The Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, Cardinal Pierbattista Pizzaballa, and the Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem, Theophilus III, called on U.S. President Donald Trump to stop the war in Gaza. They were making the call at a press conference following their visit to the enclave after Israeli strikes on the Holy Family Church. Theophilus III described the shelled Holy Family Church as a real witness and a sign that gives hope to people who refuse to leave their home. The Latin Patriarchate Church in Gaza's Old City was struck by Israeli bombardment last Thursday, killing 3 and wounding 10 people, according to media reports.
And we're grateful and thankful to our representatives there, the bishops and the clergy that are serving there. And plus to it, the presence there of the monastery and church of the Holy Family is a real witness, and it's a sign that gives hope to the people who doesn't want by no means to leave their own native land, their own native country. This is very important, and this is what really we're impressed, because we saw this a high morale despite all these problems, right? That people they are determined to remain in their own houses and their own land.
Children talked and played without batting an eyelid. They were already used to the noise of bombing. And yet, in the midst of all this, we encountered something deeper than the destruction. The dignity of the human spirit that refuses to be extinguished. We met mothers preparing food for others, nurses and doctors treating wounds with gentleness, and people of all faiths still praying to the God who sees and never forgets. We don't have any evidence, any proof or everything. We have just to acknowledge the facts. We are not experts in the military operations and so on, so it's very difficult for us to say for certain what is absolutely sure, yes or no, one case of another. I can say that Gaza is almost totally destroyed, and no one is exempted. It's not the first time it happens. It happens also in the Holy Family more than years ago, San Porphyrius, in the first weeks of the war, and every time was a mistake. Maybe it's a mistake, I don't know, because when you keep bombing everywhere, but we cannot have prove everything. I suppose, we hope there will be an investigation and we'll clarify.
Meanwhile, the chief economist of the Food and Agriculture Organization, Maximo Torero, has presented the findings of the upcoming State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World 2025 report. He noted a dramatic increase in food prices driven by a combination of unprecedented global shocks. He says the only time that we've seen similar was around the 1970s.
The report shows that a 10% increase in food prices was associated with a 3.5% increase in moderate or severe food insecurity, and a 1.8% increase in severe food insecurity. These impacts are especially acute in Africa and Western Asia, where food imports dependence and currency depreciation made food even less affordable. Countries with robust governance structures and pre-existing response mechanisms acted faster and more effectively, and investments in policy infrastructure and institutional capacity is essential for future crisis preparedness. So again, this OFI underscores inflation can undermine progress. It underlines our vulnerabilities, and it also brings the importance of strengthening resilience, inclusiveness, and transparency to be able to avoid and minimize the risk of these problems.
Global hunger has been sharply rising since 2019 and remains alarmingly high. In 2023, nearly 1 in 11 worldwide faced hunger. That's close to 10%. And over 2 billion experienced food insecurity. There are two things that we can point to in particular, two global events. One is the pandemic, which allowed prices to go up and became very sticky at the top. And the second is the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which denied an awful lot of people access to grain and drove grain prices way high. And we all know from the real world, when prices come up, they're much slower going down. The SOFI report offers analysis and practical options for action to minimize the impacts of inflation, end hunger, food insecurity, and all forms of malnutrition. It reminds us that ending hunger and malnutrition isn't just about producing more food, although that is important. It's about ensuring access to healthy diets for all, especially in times of crisis.
And the UN Security Council has unanimously adopted a draft resolution on strengthened mechanisms for the peaceful settlement of disputes. UN Secretary General Antonio Gutteras addressed the Security Council on Tuesday after the vote.
Contained in the document S/2025.
Around the world, we see an utter disregard for, if not outright violation of, international law, including international human rights law, international refugee law, international humanitarian law, and the UN Charter itself, without any accountability. And the cost is staggering, measured in human lives, shattered communities, and lost futures. We need look no further than the horror show in Gaza, with a level of death and destruction without parallel in recent times. With Israeli military operations intensifying and new displacement orders issued in Deir al-Balah, devastation is being layered upon devastation. I am appalled that UN premises have been struck, among them facilities of the UN Office for Project Services and the World Health Organization, including WHO's main warehouse. This is despite all parties having been informed of the locations of these UN facilities. These premises are inviolable and must be protected under international humanitarian law without exception. This Council is at the center of the global architecture for peace and security. Its creation reflects a central truth. Competition between states is a geopolitical reality, but cooperation, anchored in shared interests and the greater good, is the sustainable pathway to peace.
UN Secretary General Antonio Gutteras. Let's return to our lead story today, which is the UK planning to cut foreign aid, Many charities and organizations in Africa will be affected. A report from the Foreign Office says the biggest cuts this year will come in Africa, with less spent on women's health and water sanitation, with increased risks, it says, of disease and death. Bilateral support, it also says, aid is going directly to the recipient country. For some countries would decrease, and multilateral organizations deemed to be underperforming would face future funding cuts. It is not yet announced which countries will be affected. The government says the cuts follow a line-by-line strategic review of aid by the minister, which focused on prioritization, efficiency, protecting planned humanitarian support and live contracts, while ensuring responsible exit programming where necessary. Let's bring in political analyst Tokunbo Oloridami to speak about this now. Tokunbo, thank you for joining us on the program, and it's great to see you as well. What do you make of the spending of the impending cuts, and would they make a significant impact on the UK's budget this year?
Thank you, Amarachi, for having me today. I think if you look at the general approach to international diplomacy from what's coming out of the US and the UK, there's more attention to the home front. Cutting, international aid, national income from 0.5% to 3% may look a bit small, but it's quite significant. To answer your question directly, yes, because there's a lot going on in the UK now that requires that they squeeze in money from here and there. Increasing tax so much is not an option at this stage. The winter fuel allowance that was out, has been restored. There's a lot of restoration back and forth moves being made by the Exchequer, and they need money to fund some of the ventures they are getting into. So they are looking for every avenue to save money. In this instance, it is this international aid.
And of course, the country has to put forward its own national interests first. So, how do you think this reflects then on the UK's partners for countries such as Nigeria and many in Africa that deem themselves of high priority to the United Kingdom?
Well, it reflects a bit badly. It reflects a bit badly because these aids are some form of license to partnership, license to access, license to collaborate on so many fronts. And this particular aid has to do with women and children. To now see this being removed and not filling it with anything else would put new pressure on organizations like the World Bank, African Development Bank, and other, more organized aid and donor agency around the globe. But where international partnership and international collaboration comes to the table for discussion, the UK is saying, look, we're not so involved anymore. So it's bad. It's a bad signal. It's a bad signal to say the truth. But like I said, the home front is heating up, and they need money from every source. If they're cutting budgets here and there at home, it is only right to say, look, the money we're sending overseas, can we also cut that a bit at this time because of the demands at home? So while it looks bad, there's also a genuine need and political demand for it to happen.
The reason I think why this is so concerning is the fact that even though you're cutting, if you're decided to cut foreign aid to save, funds at home, you're not cutting aid to Gaza, you're not cutting aid to Ukraine, probably because these are countries of high priority and the situations there more priority to the UK. But do you think that the UK government is also considering how the ripple effects that this might have, on the UK economy going forward? The fact that if, many countries in Africa do not have access to proper healthcare and, the necessary aid that the women and children education need, then they will revert to the UK, and then you'll have an influx again of people migrating towards that part of the world.
Amarachi, that's one way to look at it, and you are right. This could put extra pressure on many of these countries that are transiting, and therefore they will see no other option, and those who can afford to jump ship will jump ship. But again, it's also good because the lack of the facilities that we are requiring foreign aid for at home should now start get home front attention. African leaders need to start thinking correctly about how they partner with foreign organizations, foreign countries, and priorities at home. Our investment in social development is right now just too low. It is too low. If that can improve, then maybe families will again begin to be able to do things for themselves. Look at the country today. Most people they provide their water, their security, their light. Think of then what's left for the government to do. So, it borders on the responsibility and responsiveness of our African leaders. And in Nigeria, for example, some of the news coming out of Nigeria are not quite bright. They're not quite making sense when you hear somebody just chuck and nick a whole budget and go somewhere to spend it. So, it's not encouraging. If you were spending money on somebody and the person is stealing it and taking it somewhere else to spend it on holiday or something like that, those are wrong signals. But perhaps now we begin to now think properly and look inwards. And yes, that pressure for immigration will certainly increase, and that money will still be spent by the UK somehow in welcoming these people, putting them in hotels and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, great point you make. But it was just last week that the mayor of London was here in Lagos, wasn't he? He did emphasize the strengthening of ties between the two countries and this aspect of business. I mean, you're asking UK companies to come into Nigeria to scale up, and then your government is also saying that it will be cutting aid, to this country. It's a fine dance, I would say, between the two, and then how to balance the relationship between the UK and Nigeria. What path can you make out of these circumstances that exist?
I don't see this as the UK abandoning the African continent. They're looking for avenues to save money to cater for what's going on at home. The contributions and capitation to World Bank and other AIDS agency by the UK will still go on. This particular cut will affect women and children and gender issues and some other social parameters. However, the collaboration on research and grants on development projects will still go on. Advocacy and the likes will still go on the ground as it used to. If a UK company were to come to say they're establishing in Nigeria today, what will be the difficulties that they will experience? How does it link to some of the cuts that are being made now? Certainly, there are links to it. Social pressure will not allow businesses to thrive as they should. So Sadiq Khan coming to Lagos to speak, and the next moment we're hearing they are caught. Those are mixed signals. If you want to do business, you want to collaborate, you want to come into Nigeria, you want to help the economy, you want to engage with Africa properly, this is not the time to cut these things, to do cuts that will send a very wrong signal. But I need to re-emphasize the fact that right here in the UK at home, they're looking to increase defense spending and cut wherever those cuts are available. And unfortunately, this is just 2% of national income and aid to Africa.
Well, we'll be looking out for the government's response to this. I mean, the Nigerian and other African governments' response to this. Tokunbo Oloridami, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me.
We're off at a short break on The World Today. Still ahead. Angola hosts the second UN Tourism and International Civil Aviation Organization Ministerial Conference. We'll have details shortly. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. As the world looks to the continent for the next big leap in travel and investment, Angola is buzzing with energy as it hosts the second UN Tourism and International Civil Aviation Organization Ministerial Conference on tourism and air transport in Africa. How can Africa connect the dots between the skies and its rich tourism potential, from visa policies and open skies to the new routes and investment in airports? It's all on the table, and the stakes could not be higher. For many African countries, better air connectivity is not just about tourism, it's about jobs, economy, and putting Africa firmly on the global map. Kingsley Urant, our general manager, is covering this event for Channels Television.
A cool, drizzly overcast in Luanda. Delegates to the second UN Tourism went through registration. Once done, they settled in for what promises to be a serious business at 9 o'clock local time. More than 500 participants and 30 African ministers are in attendance. In the face of its population, Africa is nowhere near in realizing its potential in the aviation industry.
Here, not only to share diagnosis, but above all, to think about concrete solutions that respond to Africa's challenges and opportunities in these areas.
It is true that Africa has 18% of world population, but we command only 2% of global air traffic. And this is the real challenge that we're facing today.
In the next couple of days, delegates in this hall will be talking about how to strengthen the policies in Africa's aviation and tourism industries in order to explore and exploit the great potentials that these two sectors hold in the African continent.
And the UN Tourism Agenda, Tourism for Inclusive Growth, recognizes the key importance of both intertwined sectors and identifies travel facilitation, including air connectivity and visas, as essential drivers to boost tourism in Africa.
Most of the participants here are decision makers in their various countries. A synergy between governments and private sector will be needed to ensure a clear blue sky for travelers and good customer experience. The conference later went into panel sessions on the first day. There are 2 more days to go before the second tourism conference will end and the ministerial declaration delivered. Kingsley Urant, Channels Television News.
And here's Kingsley now to give us more on this tourism conference holding in Luanda, the Angolan capital. Kingsley, it's great to see you. And I just want to ask, how it feels like going down history lane. I mean, you did a reporting for Channels Television many years ago, I would say decades at least.
Thank you very much indeed, Amarachi. Once a soldier is always a soldier. And of course, I come alive as a television reporter. And so, yeah, may have happened many years ago. But of course, it's always my great pleasure to report from a situation. So I'm here in Angola, actually in Luanda, where ministers, aviation and transport ministers, ICAO leadership, the UN tourism is championing a discussion, a 2-3-day conference that would bring in all the players in that industry, tourism and air transport, to see how they can ease the bottlenecks in transportation as well as tourism. It's been days of real getting down to work to see the synergy between tourism and air transport. Someone did say here that like Siamese twins, because if you want to encourage tourism, you must make sure that there are policies that would help ease transportation, air travel difficulties. And so they've been talking about quite a number of things, one of which really is the issue of visa, easing visa restrictions, which of course many African countries have seen the need to really make travels and coming to the various countries very important. Angola has just eased restrictions. Of course, Kenya has also done that. Cape Verde obviously has equally done that. And so they are talking to each other. Fact is, there is the need for collaboration. There is the need for partnership between African countries to ensure that the stories of this continent are told. And then, of course, with a lot of tourism destinations, ease of transport will be very helpful in ensuring that this happens. And that is what this conference is about to achieve. Again, government ministers who are the policy and decision makers are here. And we hope that at the end of the day, we'll see much improvement and relationship between tourism and air transportation.
Well, Kingsley, it is important, that they discuss the visa issues because connectivity on the continent has been really difficult. I just recently, stumbled on a video of, a YouTube vlogger who had problems getting around the continent. So this really is an issue. And I wondered exactly, what direction those conversations took in the room, where you were with these other ministers who were talking about how they can improve visa situations. What did the other countries say, those who had to get visas to get around their own countries, I mean, the Nigerian delegation included? What did they say about visa restrictions?
Oh, well, there are quite a number of people who have talked about the difficulties they've experienced coming to Angola. For example, traveling from Nigeria, some flights can take you straight to Luanda from Lagos. But of course, other airlines can take you to Angola via Ethiopia, for example. So for a trip that would have taken you 3 or 4 hours, you have to spend about 10, 14 hours, including, waiting time. So these are common problems, common challenges, which everyone here has believed and seemed concerned about, and believe that there should be open skies, that there should be no restrictions, but government and the private sector have to work together to ensure that there are policies in place that would ensure that, travels are eased, and then the difficulties encountered within Africa. Traveling within Africa is a huge problem. And so trying to find a way to work together to ease these problems so that people can travel freely, they can trade freely, they can visit each other freely, and there'll be that real interconnectivity between one part of Africa and the other. So those are some of the issues being discussed here. But again, issues around infrastructure, investment by the public and the private sector, and the easing of the stranglehold of government, on airlines or airport management, so that the private sector can come in and run such facilities as a way of bringing in money and then to ensure efficiency in air travel.
So you have 2 more days of conversations going on in Luanda, Angola. Just hoping that they're able to resolve some of these issues. But the problem with African conferences, there's a lot of talk that goes on, but the implementation is where the real action, where the real challenge is for many of these countries. I wondered if you got an opportunity to speak to members of the Nigerian delegation and what they hope to gain at the end of this conference.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, at the end of this event, this conference, there would be ministerial declaration. And some of those salient points would be reinforced. And good enough, government representatives are here, and it is hoped that they will take these decisions back to respective countries. But as someone said earlier on, it's easy to make commitments. It's easy to talk about things, but the implementation, that is where the challenge would come in, because you have to domesticate most of the decisions taken here today, and they have to go through some political considerations. Some even said security considerations and all of that. Nigeria has a strong delegation. As a matter of fact, I had a sit down with them, or a stand up with many of the delegates, and we talked about the role of Nigeria and the challenges ahead, and the need for Nigeria, considering its position in Africa, to indeed be the leader in opening up the skies, investing in the aviation industry, investing in tourism, because there are so many of such tourism destinations that are not known. And if other countries can do it, one of the delegates told me, Nigeria should be able to invest in its airlines, invest in its airports, invest in tourism destinations, and should be able to be at the driver's seat. But as they say, it's one thing to talk, it's another thing to ensure implementation. But right. Amarachi, it's been a great day, a great 2 days here in Angola, and everyone is happy that this is happening. And meanwhile, Angola is actually clocking 50 years, and so this is a milestone event, and everyone is happy here.
Yeah, and I'm sure there will be a celebration at the end of the conference. Kingsley, thank you again for being present at this conference covering for Channels Television. We can't wait to have you back when this is all done.
I can't wait to get home. Thank you very much indeed, Marachi.
Let's go off to the United States now, where President Donald Trump has called the agreement he reached with Japan the largest trade deal in history. It might be premature to make such claims, but it is certainly the most significant deal since Trump announced his so-called Liberation Day tariffs in April, which roiled stock markets and created chaos for global trade. After months of negotiations, Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba said he expects the deal will help the global economy, he said earlier today talks with the United States on tariff policy have led to an agreement entailing a reduction in duties and charges on vehicle imports from 25 to 15%.
In one historic package, we delivered the largest tax cut in American history, the largest spending cut in American history, and the largest border security investment in American history. And we got no tax on tips. Think of it, no tax on Social Security. We have no tax on overtime. It's just been, there's never been anything like it. I said to the Japanese trade representatives, and these were the top people, we concluded the one deal, Doug, and now we're going to conclude another one because they're forming a joint venture with us in Alaska, as you know, for the LNG. So I said, we'll all do that together with Chris. Is Chris here? I don't know. Chris, right? If you could set that up, Doug, it would be great. But they're all set to make that deal now, so I think it's good. This was really the one they had to make, and we're going to make a deal with Japan on the LNG in Alaska, right? Okay, thank you very much.
I just want to say that we have been making history together, and we're making history because you are the visionary, bold, strong leader that America needed. The American people recognize that. They gave us a mandate, and we're delivering on it. The exciting thing about the Big Beautiful Bill is America First is no longer just an agenda. It is now the law of the land, my friends.
Meanwhile, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has hit out at economic coercion as she signed a pact strengthening security ties with Japan during the 30th EU-Japan summit in Tokyo today. The EU is currently embroiled in trade talks with the US, with Donald Trump threatening huge tariffs on the bloc if a deal is not agreed, while Japan agreed a deal with Trump on Tuesday. Von der Leyen noted that Japan is the first non-European country to sign a security partnership with the EU, expanding its capabilities with an 800 billion euro defense industrial plan. She announced the launch of a new EU-Japan competitiveness alliance built on three pillars: EU-Japan trade, stronger economic security, and green and digital transition innovations. Meanwhile, European Council President Antonio Costa emphasized shared priorities in trade, security, and innovation. Now, the U.S. has confirmed its decision to withdraw from the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, citing concerns over the agency's direction and alignment with American foreign policy interests. Speaking during a press briefing on Tuesday, State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce stated that UNESCO's focus on the UN Sustainable Development Goals and its recognition of Palestine as a member state were among the key reasons for the decision. Bruce also criticized UNESCO's 2011 decision to admit Palestine as a member, calling it highly problematic and suggesting it had led to the proliferation of anti-Israeli rhetoric within the organization. We'll have more on the U.S. pulling out of UNESCO after the break. Plus, well, look out for these, friendly-looking robots in Hangzhou International Airport in China. They be the ones giving you a different travel experience. Stay with us. Well, Welcome back to the world today. The U.S. confirming its decision to withdraw from the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. The UN has reacted to the U.S.'s latest move. Spokesperson for the Secretary General, Stefan Dujarric, speaking to reporters on Tuesday, said Mr. Antonio Gutteras deeply regrets the U.S. decision. Earlier, Director General of the UN Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, Audrey Azoulay, expressed deep regret. She noted that UNESCO had in recent years stepped up efforts to take action wherever the agency's mission could contribute to peace.
In a statement issued by Audrey Azoulay, the Director General of UNESCO, she said she deeply regretted the decision of the United States to withdraw once again from the organization she leads. She added that in the past years, UNESCO has stepped up efforts to take action wherever the agency's mission could contribute to peace. And of course, the Secretary General joins her in deeply regretting the decision by the United States.
Our correspondent in Washington, Maria Bird, joins us now. Maria, great to see you. And this is almost deja vu with President Donald Trump. Back in 2015, he pulled the U.S., I think, out of the WHO, the World Health Organization. So what really is the reason he's pulling the U.S. out of UNESCO?
Well, as you know, this is not the first time. The president was very clear in his previous administration, and obviously there has been some time in between his last administration and now. He has not been necessarily in support of this. The president is looking for organizations that are going to align with what the U.S. is looking to do and address right now. We know that tariffs are number one of his concern. We also know that if you look at the way in which he is running the health organization within the United States with the Secretary of Health, some of the ways in which they have made decisions around, healthcare, and it's just very different ideology than the previous administration. So the president had stated this, that this is not a surprise to many Americans that this has moved forward in this direction. He stated this previously, that this is a direction he would be moving into because it did not align with his thoughts and where he believed the U.S. should be moving.
And the announcement by the Trump administration has been criticized even by China. A spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs labeled the move incompatible with a responsible major country. It does say something, when China criticizes U.S. this way. Has the U.S. responded to this, or they're just ignoring it because it's coming from China?
Well, as you know, we are expecting to be discussing tariffs, and tariffs are set to be in place with China as of August the 12th. And so next week there will be discussions with China. So I don't know if the U.S. is necessarily going to tackle this issue with China at the time. But what we do know is that this was expected, that there would be backlash. We know the president has been very clear on how he expects to address peace across the world, specifically as we look at the Gaza and as we look at Ukraine and Russia. And so because he has been a very vocal point in this, and obviously a leader, which does not stray too far from where former President Biden stood as it relates to the U.S. serving in a leadership role as it relates to peace talks. And so the president will continue the work that he's been doing in these efforts. And at this time, obviously, this is another area that is obviously a strategy he's using to move forward the United States mission and their thoughts and their alignment forward.
Right. So let's talk about the new deal with Japan. I know that the U.S. government has been in talks with the Japanese authorities. Finally, the embattled prime minister did seem really pleased about this deal that's been signed with the U.S. Help us understand what it entails and how this will benefit both parties.
Well, as you know, U.S. imports many Japanese vehicles. And so trade with Japan is one of those that I think the president has been focusing on. We know that it seems as if that region is an area. We know the Philippines were yesterday as well. This deal obviously is what the president has called and said that the U.S. had been taken advantage of for quite some time as it relates to trade across the world. And so this deal obviously addresses some of the concerns around that. Additionally, it addresses it cuts some of the actual taxes that the U.S. has had to incur as it related to in Japan. And specifically, this will address both parties because of the fact that the U.S. is now getting some things that they felt that were unfair in their perspective. And obviously, Japan knows that the U.S. is a major trade partner, especially as it relates to automotive vehicles, parts, and other various imports and exports as well.
And is also signing a trade deal with the EU. That's a first for the organization, according to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. How does, the relations between Japan and the US reflect on its relations with the EU? Because the EU is also trying to negotiate a deal with the US government.
Yes, I mean, this is, we are actually taking an unprecedented and it's a very critical time in the global market space across the world. We see that the acts and the reactions and some of the calls from the US are creating additional measures as it relates to trade with other countries, not just the US and those countries. And so this is actually addressing and causing to renegotiate trade deals across the world. And so I think that was one of the strategies. We know that the president has been looking to bring manufacturing and bringing things back on shore of the United States. We know that globally, oftentimes there's a capacity and ability to be able to produce things at a much lower rate, which is why the U.S. has imported so much for so many years now. And so I think this is really forcing upon the entire world to create some trade relationships and to address this holistically. And so the EU and Japan, that's just another example of how the US trade agreements are impacting the world.
Maria, very quickly, are there other bilateral deals prepared by the Trump administration to be signed up in the next few days or the next few weeks?
Yes, there's a few that we'll definitely be seeing coming out in the next few days and weeks. I think that by mid-August, we'll definitely see some major changes and some further countries coming forward. So I think it's just the beginning.
Thanks again, Maria. Appreciate your reporting on the issues. To other stories now, the international horse race Gallops 2025 is currently taking place near Sonkel Lake in Kyrgyzstan's Narin region. It's the first time the country is hosting the event. It brings together 12 teams from across the world, each consisting of 5 riders. The race covers over 200 kilometers around Sonkel Lake and will last 5 days. Riders are required to demonstrate endurance, strong navigation skills, and good care for their horses. The competition begins in the village of Kezart and includes daily stages similar in concept to the Paris-Dakar Rally. Participants will also have the opportunity to experience Kyrgyz culture by living in traditional yurts and sampling local food throughout the event. It features not only the race but also demonstrations of horse riding stunts and equestrian games for participants. Gallops 2025 will run until July 27th, showcasing Kyrgyzstan's natural beauty and equestrian heritage.
Each gallops are different, each competition is different because of the horses. In each country we discover the horses of the country. And yesterday I discovered my horse. He's very nice, he's very easy to gallop. I learned how to gallop with the horse. You say choo choo, and he's he's galloping. This is totally different. It's only in Kyrgyzstan we have that.
And for those who love technology and robots, China's Hangzhou International Airport has rolled out smart technologies, including humanoid robots and self-service kiosks, which officials say have greatly improved the traveler experience and sped up waiting times drastically. Now at the airport, these robots are interacting with travelers as officers process arrivals at border control centers. Visitors are also seen scanning QR codes and entering information in multilingual self-service kiosks. The humanoid robots have been deployed in the border inspection area to assist passengers like those with routine inquiries, including immigration policies and travel procedures. And a further step towards digital efficiency, self-service kiosks for foreign entry cards were launched at the airport in January. These kiosks allow travelers to make declarations online via QR codes or mobile mini programs and currently support 7 languages: English, Japanese, Korean, German, French, Spanish, and Arabic. As of July 16, more than 86,000 travelers have used the kiosks or encountered some of these humanoid robots. Well, it doesn't say if it, says anything to you, but I guess we'll have to experience this to know. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani.